She texted, "I'm pregnant with twins," then posted on Facebook before telling my family. Except I'd had a vasectomy 3 years earlier, something she didn't know. I replied, "Congratulations. Who's the father?" When her post got 347 likes before she saw my comment. I, 38 male construction project manager from Ohio, got a text from my wife on a Tuesday morning that basically set fire to the last 8 years of my life. I was standing on a job site, hard hat on, coffee going cold, reviewing poor schedules. My phone buzzed. "I'm pregnant. Twins. Can you believe it? We're going to be parents. Read it 3 times. Check the date. Not April Fools. No context that made a joke. Here's the thing. 3 years ago, I got a vasectomy. Outpatient procedure on a Friday afternoon, back to work Monday. My wife was visiting her mother that weekend. We'd talked about not wanting kids early in the marriage, agreed on it, and I handled it the way I handle most things. Quietly and without making production of it. She knew about the decision. She wasn't at the appointment. I never brought it up again because there was nothing to bring up. We weren't trying. There was no announcement to make. I also had a follow-up semen analysis done 6 months after the procedure. 0 motile sperm. Confirmed sterile. The paperwork was sitting in a folder in my home office. So when I read that text, the math was simple. Brutal, but simple. I didn't text back right away. I stood on that job site, surrounded by machinery and noise, completely still, and spent about 4 minutes doing the kind of mental accounting that rewrites your entire recent history. Every late night she'd explained away. Every weekend trip to see her college friend. Every stretch of distance I chalked up to stress or a rough patch. For minutes, then I texted, "We need to talk when I get home." She left me on read. I got home at 6. She wasn't there. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water I didn't touch. At 6:47, my phone lit up with a Facebook notification. Someone had tagged me in a post. My wife had posted publicly to her 400-plus Facebook friends. Ultrasound image included. Long caption. "So excited to share that our family is growing. Twins on the way." Couldn't keep the secret any longer. She tagged me, her mother, her sister, her entire circle. Comments were already flooding in. Heart emojis, crying emojis. "OH, my God, congratulations." She hadn't called my mother, hadn't called my brother, hadn't spoken to me beyond that one text. But 400 acquaintances already knew. I watched the likes climb. 47, 90, 140. I picked up my phone, opened the post, and typed, calmly, deliberately, "Congratulations. Who's the father?" Then I put my phone face down on the table and finished my water. She came home at 8:15, walking through the door with a glow on her face and a bag of takeout, clearly expecting balloons and celebration. She looked at my face. Then she looked at her phone. The post had been live for an hour and 20 minutes. 347 likes. Dozens of comments. And sitting right underneath her announcement, visible to everyone she knew, were my 7 words. I watched the color leave her face. "What did you?" She stopped. "Why would you write that?" "Because it's a fair question," I said. "That's insane. That's our baby. Those are someone's babies." I said, "Not mine." She tried the confusion angle first. Said I was being paranoid, that stress was getting to me, that she couldn't believe I'd humiliate her like this in front of everyone. She actually used the word humiliate. She came at me with tears forming, voice cracking in that specific way she had when she needed me to back down. I didn't back down. "I had a vasectomy 3 years ago." I said, "Confirmed sterile. I have the documentation." The tears stopped forming. That's when I knew everything I needed to know. She pivoted fast. "Vasectomies fail," she said. "It happens all the time. You should know that." Technically not wrong. Vasectomies do have a failure rate under 1%. She was betting I didn't have documentation. I told her about the follow-up semen analysis. 0 motile sperm. Confirmed in writing. Her jaw tightened. I asked for a paternity test. She said she wouldn't do one. Said it was insulting. I told her, then we had a serious problem. She slept at her sister's that night. The next few days were a masterclass in manipulation. Her mother called the following morning. I let it go to voicemail. 8-minute message about how I'd always been emotionally unavailable, how her daughter deserved better, how I was being monstrous during a vulnerable time. I saved every second of it. Her sister texted calling me a narcissist. No response. Then she called my mother. Not directly. She knew my mother, 64, retired, hates conflict, and she told her that I'd had some kind of breakdown, that I was making terrible accusations without cause, that she was scared and pregnant and alone. My mother called me in tears. That one actually landed. I drove to my mother's house that evening and sat with her for 2 hours. I laid out everything. The vasectomy, the follow-up results, the Facebook post, her reaction when I told her. I showed my mother the documentation on my phone. I watched her face cycle through about 6 emotions in 4 minutes. When I finished, she was quiet. Then she said, "What do you need?" "I need you out of the middle of this," I said. She called my wife back and told her not to reach out again until things were resolved. My wife apparently tried to argue. My mother hung up. By Wednesday morning, my wife had deleted the Facebook post, but screenshots were already circulating in our mutual social circle. People were asking questions. Her carefully built announcement had become a public mess, and she knew it. She came back Thursday evening. Different energy. Less tears, more calculation. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and told me she'd spoken to a lawyer. "Okay," I said. "He said if you refuse to acknowledge paternity, we're going to have a complicated legal situation." "I haven't refused anything," I said. "I asked for a paternity test." "That's different." "I don't want a test." "I know you don't." "I want my husband to trust me." "I know you do." She leaned forward. "If you push this, I'll tell everyone you abandoned me during my pregnancy. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you are." There it was, the mask fully off. "Go ahead," I said quietly. "While you're doing that, I'll be filing for divorce and requesting a court-ordered paternity test as part of the proceedings, which will be public record." She stared at me. "I already spoke to an attorney," I added, "Tuesday afternoon, right after I got your text." She hadn't seen that coming. She escalated anyway. Entitled people always do when the soft pressure stops working. They just turn up the volume. Within a week, she had quietly started working her social circle. Mutual friends were hearing a version of events where I'd had some kind of episode, where the pregnancy had triggered something unstable in me, where she was a frightened woman dealing with a difficult husband. A woman I'd met twice at a birthday party sent me a Facebook message saying she was concerned about the situation. I didn't respond. Then she went for my job. She didn't call my boss directly. She reached out to his wife, who she'd met once at a Christmas party, and had a long, concerned conversation about my mental state. My boss pulled me aside 2 days later. I sat in his office and gave him the short version, showed him the vasectomy documentation on my phone. He's a practical man. He leaned back and said, "Okay, I just needed to hear it from you." Never mentioned it again. The boldest move came about 10 days in. I came home to find her in the kitchen. She'd been coming by the house during the day while staying at her sister's, which I hadn't explicitly stopped yet since the legal process had just started. She had bank statements printed and laid out on the kitchen table. She wanted me to set up automatic monthly transfers for medical costs and prenatal care. Framed it as my legal obligation. And here's the thing, she wasn't entirely bluffing. Under Ohio law, a husband is legally presumed to be the father of a child born during marriage. She'd clearly been coached on this. She knew that the presumptive father doctrine existed, that fighting it would take time and money and a court process, and she was betting I'd find it easier to just comply. She slid a paper across the table. The monthly amount she was requesting was not small. I looked at it, looked at her. "I'll see you in court," I said, picked up my keys and walked out. I filed for divorce 11 days after that first text. My attorney, a family law specialist in Columbus with over 2 decades of experience, filed a petition in Franklin County and included an immediate motion for court-ordered genetic testing. Under Ohio law, a party in divorce proceedings can petition the court to establish or contest paternity, and the judge can order DNA testing accordingly. Her attorney fought the testing motion, argued it was premature, that it was harassment, that forcing prenatal testing would cause medical stress. The judge, who had clearly heard every variation of this argument many times, ordered a non-invasive prenatal paternity test at 16 weeks, blood draw from the mother, cheek swab from the alleged father, zero risk to the pregnancy. While the legal process moved forward, she kept going. She did an Instagram live, vague, carefully worded, nothing legally actionable about navigating a painful season and being betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you. Her follower count went up. People sent her a baby gift from an Amazon registry she'd quietly published. Her mother sent an actual physical letter to my brother's house detailing what a failure I was as a husband. My brother photographed it and texted me, "Should I frame this evidence?" "Save it," I sent back. I saved everything. Every voicemail, every text, every screenshot. My attorney was building a file, and I was feeding it steadily. The DNA results came back on a Thursday morning. My attorney called before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. "You're not the father," he said, of either twin, 0% probability." I set my mug down. I sat with it for a minute, not because it was a surprise, but because confirmation and suspicion are two different things. This was 8 years, a house we'd bought together, a marriage I thought was at least honest, if imperfect. "Okay," I said, "what's next?" "Now we use this." Here's what the legal picture looked like from that point forward. With paternity conclusively disproven and vasectomy records on file, my presumptive father status under Ohio law was eliminated. The divorce proceedings shifted significantly. Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, but courts do consider documented infidelity in the equitable division of marital assets and in spousal support determinations. My attorney built the case cleanly. DNA results, vasectomy records, the full timeline laid out in black and white. Her request for long-term spousal support, which her attorney had been quietly constructing, collapsed under the weight of what we submitted. Her claim to the marital home weakened considerably given that I'd made every mortgage payment. The motion requesting I pay child support, a Hail Mary argument from her attorney based on presumptive father doctrine, was denied outright. The biological father had been identified during the proceedings, and a separate family court ordered him to establish paternity and bear financial responsibility. Now, about the biological father. I'd had a strong suspicion early on based on the timeline of those college friend weekends. I was right. He was a man she'd been seeing for at least 8 months. He was married, with 2 kids and a house in the suburbs, and his wife did not know. There was nothing legally improper about that information reaching the right person. His wife found out. Within 2 weeks, he was facing his own divorce proceedings. The future my wife had apparently been building in her head, the one where he'd step up and they'd figure out together, evaporated fast. He wanted absolutely nothing to do with a paternity claim that had already blown up his own life. He tried to fight the court-ordered paternity and child support determination. Ohio family courts don't have much patience for that. He lost. He's paying. The letter her mother mailed to my brother? We submitted it as part of a documented harassment pattern. The Instagram live posts were preserved. The Facebook post screenshots, including my comment and the 347 likes, were filed. Every voicemail, every text, every piece of correspondence, all of it time-stamped and documented. She had spent weeks building a narrative. We spent months dismantling it with paper. The divorce settlement was finalized about 9 months after I filed, roughly 2 months after the twins were born. The marital home went to me. She received her proportional share of the joint savings based on documented contributions, which were modest. She received 18 months of short-term spousal support, which Ohio courts typically award in marriages over 5 years regardless of circumstances. I wasn't happy about it, but that's the law, and I wasn't going to fight something I couldn't win. Long-term support was denied. The house was mine. The biological father was on the hook for the twins. Her mother sent me a text 6 months after the settlement finalized. "I hope you're happy with what you've done to this family." I read it once, put my phone down, went back to my coffee. My brother took me to a steak place in Columbus. The week it was all done, we split a bottle of bourbon, talked about baseball, and then he looked at me and said, "You posted that comment knowing exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" Of course I did, I said. He laughed for about 30 seconds straight. It wasn't the most mature move I've ever made, but she had just created a public announcement designed to establish a false reality before I could respond privately. For 100 witnesses to her version of events before I'd had a single conversation. The comment wasn't cruelty. It was refusal. 7 words that stopped the narrative before it could get built around me. She had 347 likes and a deleted post. I had lab documentation, a divorce decree, and a paid-off house. Document everything. That's genuinely the only takeaway here. Entitled people count on you not having any. They move fast, build narratives, recruit people, create public records of the version of events that protects them. The only counter to that is your own paper trail, medical records, legal records, dates, times, and facts kept carefully and waiting.